Hey gang, welcome to today's high value publishing session. I am really excited about this session. This is the first time we've had a very special guest join us today. I'm joined by Sean Griffey with Industry Dive. Hey, Sean.
Eric, thanks for having me. Excited to be the first special guest.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about this. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and you and I have known each other for, a lot of years now. Although we haven't had a chance to work together much recently, I've just always been impressed with, the work you've done over the years, and have been really excited to see what you've been doing with Industry Dive. So I'm excited to dive in today and talk a little bit more about kind of where you've come from and where you're going.
Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Hey, before we kick off, though, I would just have a few housekeeping items here. I want to let everybody know this session is indeed being recorded, and any links that we talk about during today's session, we'll put them with the recording when we post it. And all these sessions will be available at highvaluepublishing.com. If you go out there, all the sessions are listed there with all the links. Typically, we post these on Thursdays of the week, so we'll hope to do that again this week. And all these sessions are available as a podcast. So if you're not subscribed yet, go out to your favorite podcasting platform, sign up for it out there. Leave a review if you would. We'd really appreciate that. That'll help us boost this up a little bit. I think we're like number 172 in Lithuania now, so I'm really excited about that. From marketing podcasts. If you have any questions for Sean during this, please post them to the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat along the way, and I'll be passing them along to Sean. But feel free to post them in there. Or if you're watching this archived, just post the questions at highvaluepublishing.com. And as always, I want to thank What's New in Publishing. They rebroadcast all these sessions every week. Really good industry journal for publishers. I think one of the best ones in the industry right now. So highly recommend you guys check that out. Well, Sean, I'm going to talk a little bit about Industry Dive, and I think we went over some of these stats, and I was really impressed by these in just a short 10 years. You guys are now in 23 industries, I think, as of yesterday, right?
Just launched a new one in the multifamily industry last week. So 23.
Multifamily housing?
Multifamily housing, absolutely.
Nice. So 23 industries as of today, over 53 email newsletters, combination of daily and weekly newsletters, 2.5 million email subscribers. That's astounding, especially in the B2B markets, to see that many email subscribers there. And this is also, I think, really impressive. You're now well over the 100 million mark at a 30% EBITDA margin, which I think is very, very impressive on that. I think one of the key things I want to do is, hey, before we dive in here, just tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get started with Industry Dive? And, kind of how have you grown this thing out? I'd just really like to hear the genesis of Industry Dive as a product.
Yeah, it's we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So we've been out this since January 2012. I have two co-founders, Ryan Williamson, Eli Dickinson, and myself, and we started this with a bit of a contrarian model in mind. This was back in 2012. And if you remember what was going on around there, sites like Upworthy were all of the buzz, right? People were writing for the algorithms of these search platforms, and everything was like get on not just the search platforms, but the social platforms, get and share onto those. And I would go to, on the B2B side, I'd go to industry events, and people were talking about lead generation and buyer intent. And there was a panel that I sat in where the keynote said, if we write a piece of content and don't understand more about your buying intent after you've read it, then we've done something wrong. And I just looked at the media landscape at the time, my partners I did, and said, we've gone really far from what made media great, right? Which, the days of everyone saying content is king were kind of gone. Content was a tool to monetize for lead generation, or content was spam, clickbait to draw people in to serve something there. And so we launched this in 2012, thinking about, can we produce quality content that's insightful, that's forward-looking? We wanted to think about design at the time, and particularly in 2012, we were focused on mobile. If you kind of remember, this was right when Facebook was going public, and the knock on Facebook was, can they make money on mobile? Right, they're a desktop site only, which seems absurd now, but was a big part of it. So we launched those two, and then one of the key pieces was, how do we get first party data? And we knew that really believed that a modern media company would be differentiated by the data it collects and how it can use it. And so we launched there. Day one, it was 3 of us. We launched with 5 sites because we wanted to be ambitious. And I didn't want to be one of the companies where it said, as soon as we perfect this one site, we'll launch the second one. And then you spend 10 years like trying to perfect the first one because you're never going to be perfect. So we launched with 5, knowing that they were going to all be bad. But we made them a little bit better every day. And we're here now.
So I love a couple of things you said here. Number one, I think you're absolutely right. The enemy of good is great, right? Or in this case here, the enemy of great is perfection. The fact that you said, hey, we're going to dive in, we're going to make some mistakes. It's not going to be right the first time, but we're not going to let that necessarily stop us. I think the other thing that you said that I really, really loved was you had an emphasis on design. I think if people look at, so I've got up the Food Dive site here. I think if people were to look at the design of this, they'd be like, well, wait a minute, this isn't much design. That's what I love about this. One of the things I always talk about is, hey, minimalistic design is usually the best design with this. So I love how clean this thing is, how there's not stuff scattered everywhere. You basically got a featured stories, hey, your top stories, and then this is, I can always see what's new. I just come to your site and I'm just scrolling through and I can always just see what's new and keep up with what's going on. I think this is absolutely brilliantly designed. If anybody out there is looking for design ideas for their own websites, you can learn a lot from this particular site. Hey, you mentioned mobile. Do you have any idea across your network what percentage of people are looking at your sites on mobile versus desktop?
Yeah, it's been fairly consistent, though there are times when it changes. But in general, we're probably 40% mobile, primarily. And in that number, we're looking, there's some tablet traffic in there that I throw in the mobile, yeah. But the tablet honestly has shrunk over the years, compared to where it was 5-10 years ago. The mobile, mobile's gone up, but tablet's gone down, and it's kind of netted right there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I just said when we have a viral story or something, or during the pandemic, right, then we see the mobile spike up. There was times when we first got out of the office and people were trying to figure things out, and it was remarkable. Some of the stories would go crazy on the phone, but by and large, we've been consistent about 40% for years now.
That makes sense. I see that about the same in B2B environments in general. Unless you're in regional B2B publishing, I see that trend a little higher. Usually by about 50 to 60% in regional B2B. But yeah, in B2B kind of trade, stuff like this, like national or international trade, you're right. I see it to be about 40%. There's still a lot of people out there using desktops and laptops during the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you're still taking a kind of a mobile first approach to it in terms of the way you're looking at the design, right?
Yeah, I mean, we start with mobile and go backwards on everything. I think the difference between where we were 10 years ago and now is that it was a real differentiator 10 years ago. Right. And as an upstart, we were really trying to push everything that differentiates us. And so we would talk about mobile in the beginning because we knew we were a lot better than everyone else. Now I think, honestly, for everyone, mobiles is kind of just table stakes, right? If you're not doing something well in mobile, then you're not really a competitor at this point.
It is, but I'm actually surprised. I still see a lot of publishers out there who their websites may be mobile, but when you look at their email newsletters, they're not mobile. Like they're still trying to shove a 728 by 90 ad into an email newsletter, for example, and they're not rendering well on Gmail or on Apple Mail. So I still think that it's not just a website; it's your email and other strategies as well. You got to think about the mobile first.
Absolutely, I agree with that. When we launched with mobile apps. And the reality, we thought there was a thesis of we could be your job on your phone, right? Could we be the hub for your industry on your phone, just like ESPN is your hub for sports, right? And there's a travel app and a weather app. We could be your job app. But the reality is email is your work home on your phone, right? That email is where you go and live for your office. And so we always optimize for email, but now we've abandoned the apps completely and made that the real focus is the email.
Got it. Well, speaking of email, so we've got 2.5 million email subscribers. How did you build up to that many email subscribers, especially when you've got websites that work as well as they do? How did you really build to that level of email subscriptions?
Well, it's a priority for us. And it's always been number one, right? And I think some things, if you make it your number one priority, you find a way to make it work. And so we cared about this right away. And, I could go all day on why I believe in email, but, one of it is it's a platform we own as publishers, right? And there's very few platforms we own. It's also a push platform, meaning we can send it to you and get it in front of you anytime. And there's not many push platforms in the world. Notifications and email are two of them. And then third, it comes with this huge first-party data set, right? Not only in the demographics that you collect, but what you can track and do with the data once someone comes in through your email, once you can connect devices. If you open up your laptop and then your phone, I can now know that this is Eric's laptop and this is his phone, and I can tell you when he's going to be on each of them, and I can pull the behaviors from one into the other, right? And so we thought all of that's going to be really important for us, those three things. And so we focused on email as the core of our business. And so, the bad news is there's no one easy way to grow email. If there was, it's not so bad news. The good news is if there was, no one would need us. Right. The value the media company has is we can, particularly in B2B, is we can aggregate niche, hard to reach audiences. And by doing so, we provide value. So building these email lists, it's always been hand-to-hand combat, and you have to be a little bit everywhere. Today, our number one source of subscribers is from the websites. It's organic conversions, which is great. So you worry about conversion on the site. You worry about how you can get passed along. You worry about SEO and all of the things that get it in there, because that drives the most. But we also spend a real amount of time looking at different paid channels, and that could be partnering with associations or trade shows or buying ads with them. We certainly do LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and those types of things to draw subscribers. What I tell people on those is, marketers eventually destroy everything that's good, right? You find a vein of gold, and then marketers will mine it until it's destroyed. And so over 10 years, channels that have worked really well, they've come and gone. And the secret to this is to always experiment and always look for the next channel, and not to assume that what you're doing today is going to work tomorrow, because it's not. So everyone's going to catch on, and then it stops working.
But I like how you said, though, that it starts primarily, and the bulk of these have come from organic from your website. There may be some other strategies, LinkedIn lead ads, Facebook lead ads, other strategies that you may use, but that the bulk of them are coming from organic signups from your website. And I think that's really important. One of the things you and I have talked about before, and that I always emphasize, the number one job of any media website is to capture the email address of a person visiting it. If someone's gotten to your site, you should capture an email address, but you use a good job of content. So I just want to point out here, I saw an email sign up, a house ad up here before. You've got a sign up right there. You got to sign up for the free newsletter right there. You're coming down here. I've seen here's another sign up for the email newsletter. You've got at the bottom of the page, I'll show you, I'll go into an actual page. So it's going to an actual page here. Again, get the free newsletter right there. And then scrolling down, there's another email sign up right there. There's another, big email sign up. I think you told me earlier that this one down here has really been performing well for you guys, right?
Surprisingly, at the bottom of the page, we didn't expect it to convert as well as it did, but we put that in, and it's outperformed even some of the inlines and the rest. But I think what you said is right, and you've always been, you've been really good at understanding how these pages work. I love hearing you speak at conferences and talk about it. The conversion really matters. It's got to be your number one goal on here, and obviously, we're not shy in asking you to sign up. I mean, I think you pointed out 5 or 6 different places in 2 pages that we've done it. For us, that's the most valuable thing we can do, is get you to say that you want to be a part, to get a newsletter from us.
So I think the lesson for any publisher here is, there's lots of strategies, but if you do nothing but focus on capturing the organic, if you've got good content, you can focus on capturing the organic visitors and getting them into the newsletter. They're going to want to get more of what you've got. If you've got good content, it all starts with that, right, Sean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you got junk throwaway content, you might as well forget it. It's game over at that point right there. So you said email is really the key to the success. So I imagine that's also the key to the revenue drivers. So how are you really using that email to drive the various revenue streams that you've got?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the push product piece of this gets some of the best results, right? So the click and response of a sponsorship in a newsletter is always going to dwarf what you get on the website, right? From a banner ad or somewhere else. It just,
especially on a CTR basis.
Yeah, it's gonna outperform. And I think for marketers, the prestige of being the sole sponsor for a week matters to some of them more than it would to say, I bought a bunch of, banner ads on the website. And honestly, the banner ads on the website account for less than 10% of our revenue. So it's really, the email and what we drive off of it is the bulk of it. It also helps us, the data helps us with clients in different ways. We have a content studio that I'm sure we'll talk about a bit, but that helps us, that's designed to help our clients tell their own complex stories. And one of the things that media companies can do is use data to help inform what those stories can be, right? And so now we go to our content studios and say, hey, one real world example that I do is the middle pandemic, we have a CFO publication, and a client said to us, hey, we're have all of our campaigns around the PPP loans. Is it still resonating with people? And what we've been able to say to them is, well, we've got 200,000 CFOs across our portfolio. Like, why don't we look at the data to see how what they're reading today? And we can tell you the day that they stopped caring about the PPP loans, right? We can tell you what week that wasn't one of the top stories. And now we'll change your campaign around it. And so we do that, and then we can provide distribution to it. And so you've created great content on top of that. We've created a new playbook for you, or we're going to launch a webinar for you, or the rest. Now we can put that in front of those clients with it. So, the email, there's a long way to say the email data, the email drives revenue by giving us distribution, but more than that, it gives us data that then we can become, not just a transactional partner for these, we can become more of a consultative partner as well.
So imagine you're using, you don't have to go into the specifics, but you're using probably an email marketing automation kind of audience CRM platform that you can track not just the emails you're sending and what people are doing, but also what people are looking at on your website down to the individual level.
Yeah, we've got a CDP that sits in the middle there, and separate ESP with a CDP that sort of coordinates it, quarterbacks it. The truth of the matter is, we were in 2012. We kind of realized that this is being efficient with your audience. If you're going to go niche audience, you need to be really efficient with them when you have them, right? And what drove me insane, for years prior to this was you would see someone in the industry with a webinar, and they'd send an email blast for it. And then they'd send 10 more email blasts for it. And you just being in the industry, you're like, they've got a registration guarantee and they're having a hard time filling it. And so
Right.
they're just going to send email after email until they get, whatever 100 people, 400 people they promised this client. They're just going to keep hammering these everyone. And what I said was we can't hammer an entire audience. We've got to be much more selective about what we're doing. And scale means that we're going to have to slice and dice these people in different ways. And so one of the things we did was we were trying to build these capabilities on our own. And I looked up one day and realized, oh no, the people who create CDPs and the marketing software automation have already built this in a better, more robust way than us. And so we instead of, abandoned all the time and effort I spent trying to build this and just went and bought it as part of the platform. And
I think anymore you can either add a good CDP on top of an email provider, or there's some email providers that have their own CDP capabilities within them. So I think you're right.
Absolutely.
It's nothing you need to build.
Yeah, someone like Omida does a great job with that, right? Like they're trying to build the ESP plus the 20% of your analytics that you actually use and the 20% of the CDP you actually use and the rest. And I think there's going to be end-to-end solutions for all of us soon.
Yeah, the three big ones that I see most publishers use are certainly Omida, and then I see a lot of publishers are using HubSpot these days, but HubSpot's pretty expensive, and I see a lot of people using ActiveCampaign for the same thing, does the same stuff. So yeah, Dorothy just asked, can you explain what CDP means? Consumer
data platform.
Yeah, consumer data platform.
I call it a customer data platform. Yeah,
I was over with customer data platform, but yeah, you want to briefly explain what you mean by CDP?
Yeah, so the ones you listed have all the capabilities. I think we use one called Lytics, kind of analytics, but the Lytics. There's also BlueConic, which is in the publisher space all the time, and they do a good job. I think the role of the CDP is really, I call it the quarterback that sits in between a lot of your tech stack to really aggregate a holistic view of your customer. So, your email service provider may be able to tell you something, your Google Analytics or Web Analytics may be able to tell you something. You may have registration data with On24, your webinar hosting platform, and the CDP really sits across it and will say, okay, I'm not looking at three different users across these three platforms. I'm looking at one, and how do I make sense of that one person and what they care about, and how can we find their interests and behavior and predict stuff on them more so than you can just with one platform. So for us, it's when we know who you are, because you click through an email, we can track your email behavior, but now we can, we can see what you're doing on the website and track that behavior too, and tie that back into one place.
Well, I don't want to get too deep into the CDP because this is getting off topic, but I wanted to show you one example. This happens to be ActiveCampaign. So for any given individual here, we can track if they're an email subscriber, if they're not an email subscriber, which emails they open, which links they click. But also, we're tying into the circulation system, so we know who, in this case, they're still a print, who's a controlled subscriber, who's not a controlled subscriber, when their dates are. We can then look in there and we can see, okay, what pages on the website did this person visit when? Right? That's this consumer or customer data platform that Sean's talking about here. So I won't go too deep into that. It's a subject for a whole separate session. Go ahead.
The power for us, just to kind of last thing on the power for us is then to say, we put them in cohorts, right? So not just looking at that person, but for us, and our editorial department uses it, right? Who is the target subscriber for Food Dive, right? Like we don't actually, we actually care about food manufacturers. But, my mom reads Food Dive. I don't actually care what she does on Food Dive because she doesn't, she's a retired government worker, right? She doesn't help me, but she's interested and wants to do it. But we'll actually go say, okay, here's the people from Kraft and Heinz and General Mills. What are they doing on the site, relative to the rest? And that's where you can really do interesting things.
Yep. Hey, you mentioned, so obviously email is at the core of what you're doing right now. And I want to know, do you have any concerns about the longevity of email as a medium? I mean, email's been around for a long, long time now. But do you have any concerns about that disappearing or being supplanted by something else. I mean, I'm sure Facebook would have loved to say instant messaging was what's going to take over, which it didn't. But do you have any concerns about that?
I don't. I mean, I think the glib answer that I always give people, and then there's like a longer, more real one is, people say, oh, the next generation doesn't, they don't use email. My kids in high school, they don't email at all. They're all on text, and now they're all on Snapchat, and they don't want to do this stuff. And what I always say is like, but then they're going to get a job, right? And the day that they get a job, they're going to suddenly find themselves on email. And so something's going to have to replace email in the workplace for us. And there have been tons of email killers over the years, and they've all kind of come and go, right? And ideas may have sane, but it was, AOL's instant messenger, and now it's Slack, or it's going to be Chatter or the rest. I think it's a lot easier to replace the software than it is the platform, right? And so email is the enduring one. I wouldn't want to build on a social in social media and a social network, because Facebook could be the next MySpace here pretty soon, with Snapchat or TikTok or something replacing it. And then something's going to come replace that over time too. But email is the one that's endured. I've not seen anything better, so I'm fine with it. I'm not worried at all.
I mean, I think it's keeping your eye on what may be coming down the road, but just being aware, hey, look, what's the bread and butter right now? It's still web and email. It's building the foundation on those two platforms, in my opinion, because they're the ones that you own, right? If you're building on Slack, Slack owns it. If you're building on Facebook as a messenger, Facebook owns it. Email and web are ubiquitous platforms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that. Another good, interesting question here. I wanted to bring up a quote that I saw in one of your articles that I think you wrote, or an interview you had. It was this one here. I love this. You said, media companies are looking for the latest and greatest thing, but a lot of business media is just executing a smart strategy. Sean, I got to tell you, like I said, you and I have known each other for a long time, but I thought this was brilliant, because I think there are a ton of media companies that are out there looking for the latest and greatest thing when they're just not executing on the fundamentals, or they haven't got a good strategy that are saying, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it better than anybody else. What do you think about this?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've built a lot of the company around this, and I've told people, we're not trying to be pioneers, we're trying to be operators, right? And I'm not trying to be the first one that goes into a new market. I think 6 or 7 years ago, someone's like, we should launch into cannabis, we should launch whatever. And I just said, listen, why don't we wait for the market to mature, and then we can go in and try to out execute, right? Because this is really an execution game. I mean, I think the great thing about media is you have, and you just showed, you can go to our site and see everything we're doing. You can see what I care about based on the call to actions that are on the site. You can see all of the rest. There are no secrets in what we're doing here. I was more of the food dive, right? Like as a veteran, you can go to my publication site and see everything about it. You can understand how we're monetizing. We can all do that with each other's site. So there's no sense in trying to come up with secret sauce or something. The best thing you can do is spend your time just being a little bit better than everyone else, and not trying to create something amazing. You've got plenty of time to let someone else waste their money and effort, building this stuff out. When the time comes, just do it better.
Oh, you have no idea how refreshing it is to hear that. And I thought it was fascinating. I thought you were going to go down the path of saying, the latest and greatest thing from like a digital marketing or a digital media perspective, or the latest social platform. You actually brought up even the industries you go into. It's like, hey, wait. We're not going to dive into this new industry until it actually matures to the point that it's worthwhile for us going in. And then we're going to go in and we're just going to execute better than anybody else in that particular industry. I love that approach.
Absolutely. I think you avoid wasting a lot of time and energy, and I remember the day the iPad came out. And it was literally the first day the iPad came out. And I won't say who it was, but I had dinner that night just by coincidence with the CEO of what was one of the largest B2B media companies at the time. And I was at an upstart. This was even before we launched Industry Dive. And I was at the last business. We were talking about it. And he was just really disappointed that all of these consumer media companies had gotten it in advance and launched with magazine versions, flip magazine versions of their magazines on the iPad. And he was just dismayed that he didn't get that opportunity because we were B2B. And I just remember thinking, but we don't know if anyone wants this, right? You don't know if your advertisers want this. And there's by definition, they just sold the first one today. So there's no audience there, right? There's zero audience there. Why do you want, why, And it turns out people didn't want a flip version of magazines on an iPad, and all that money would have been wasted had he gotten that. And so I wait to see that there's money there, and I'm, wait to see demand, wait to see the money and go after it. I don't need to be the first on iPad. I certainly didn't need to be the first in video or the rest. When someone's proven that it works in business media, I will be there, guns blazing, but not a minute before.
Love it. Love it. I've got a photo I'll share with you sometime of me back with one of the first Google Glass glasses that came out when I was working at HarperCollins. So I'll show it with you because it was that was going to be all the rage and take over everything. It was virtual reality. Didn't go anywhere.
Yep.
But yeah, it may get there someday. So I wanted to ask you a couple more quick questions here. I want to be sensitive to your time. You did acquire a content studio. You acquired part of NewsCred just a little bit ago. Tell me just briefly about what you acquired and why you acquired it and how it's fitting into your business.
Yeah, I think a little of this is a repeat of what I said before, but I spent a lot of time trying to think of what can media companies do uniquely that other people can't? Where can we win, or should we be able to win that others can't? And if you think of Content Studio, the purpose of our Content Studio said our clients have stories to tell of their own, right? And there's a popular saying now that every company is a media company. And I always retort that media is a hard business, right? So if every company is a media company, we know how hard media is. They're not going to be successful unless they have help. And so for us, we thought a content studio is really help people fulfill that mission. But the 1.0 of content studios were, what do you need? You needed good storytellers and you needed marketers. And almost anyone could do that. There were standalone content studios. Their ad agencies did it. All kinds of people come in and said, we will help you create good content. I think the content studios of tomorrow are really going to be built around the data that drives insights, and then they're going to add distribution on top of it. Yep. And really, a media company is the only one that can do that. So we acquired a content studio, added it to capabilities we were building in-house, and it's really taken us from a transactional relationship with a lot of our marketers, where they will come in and say, produce a webinar for me, or, help me with my message around this trade show, promote my presence at this trade show or this thing. And we've now gone to, hey, I'm buying a 2-year spend with you. That's a $500,000, $2 million. And we want you to help us come up with a strategy informed based on what our target audience is doing and your expertise in the industry. We want you to help run it. It's been incredibly successful for us. One of the faster growing parts of our business.
So if I were to restate this, see if I'm getting this right here, Sean, basically, you had the industries, you had the audiences, and you had the ability to distribute whatever your advertisers wanted to distribute to those audiences. But what you're doing now with your acquisition of the content studio and building that out is you become more adept at saying, hey, not only can we help you create, now we can help you create that story, create that content, create the downloadable assets, create the articles. We now have the ability to help you create the content for use on your own website and for distribution through our existing platforms.
Absolutely. And in some cases, we will run your website for you. And we will have the content team on it, and we will run it as a media property. And you have a newsletter, like we will execute your newsletter for you and the rest. And you have spent 5 years building up an audience, doing lead generation and building up audience, and your sales reps call them. What do you do after your sales reps have called them? right? Like what have you done with that, database that you spent, hundreds of thousands of literally millions of dollars building on a year-end basis to continue a relationship with them, to speak with them in a authentic way that resonates with what they're facing today. Like we can help you do that because you're not a media company, right? Let's be honest. You're not a media company and you're a great marketer, but we're media operators. We can help with this. So that's part of the point.
And it's an opportunity, I think, to get a lot deeper with your client that, I mean, hey, if you're running their website or you're running their newsletter program, it's a lot harder to fire you than it is to cancel an ad insertion contract.
Absolutely. And we can add things that others can't. We do quarterly business reviews with them where we share insights on, we will set up, in the CDP, we talked about what is your ideal customer? Let's set up a cohort of those people on our websites. And every quarter we'll talk about what those folks did. Nice. We'll talk about what they care about, what they read, right? Those are things that we can do that other people can't do based on our data. And it really goes from we are a marketing vendor to we are a part of your team. We're an extension of your team. And that's ultimately what we want to get to.
So I've got one tactical question from one of our viewers here. Scott asks, hey, Sean, have you ever tried content metering to convert emails? So I think more, instead of a metered paywall or a hard paywall, a metered or hard reg wall.
It's a good question. We haven't done it. We haven't gone that far. And maybe in some of our industries, we probably think about it. I mean, I think there's a couple things here. If you go look at your stats on, total visitors and unique visitors, I think you're going to find that the vast majority of them aren't coming enough to hit a meter, right? And so you got to convert them on the one or two shots you've got a month to get them and over time. And so what my fear is in an industry like ours, the people who hit the meter are your loyal readers who are already signed up, who you've lost the cookie or the tag or something that says, don't bug this person. And you're just going to bug the person. So I haven't done it. But if I was at a consumer publication that got just mounds and mounds of traffic, I might consider something like that, but not when we're measuring our audiences in the hundreds of thousands, not the millions on the website. It just doesn't make as much sense.
Well, look, what you're doing right here, so I think there's also the carrot and the stick. What you're doing right here is you're using the carrot. You're saying we've got great content presented very clearly, very easily, clean design. This is something that you want to sign up if you're in this industry. You find this valuable. It's the carrot versus the stick of, oh, no, you can't see this unless you sign up, which isn't necessarily a bad way to go, but I typically find the engagement of those two different audiences to be vastly different on that. So, hey, look, you built up an audience of 2.5 million email subscribers using the carrot approach so far. I'd say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But as always, I'm always around experimenting. I've actually thought about, hey, I should implement a reg wall for this particular B2B title or other, so that if you dive into that and check it out, and if I dive into it and check it out, we'll share our results with each other on that one. Last question, and then we'll drop it off because this is going to be a little bit longer session than we normally do. What's next? What's next for you and for Industry Dive? Where are you going from here?
Well, I think growth comes in a couple different ways for us. We're in 20 some markets right now. We'll launch into legal in Q2 at some point, and then we were debating a couple more for Q3. So we've historically said launch 3 or so new publications every year. Because there are dozens of markets that I still really like that we want to go, and so that's the continue executing on the playbook part of our growth. But I think what gets really interesting for a business like ours is when you build these audiences across industries, if we add capabilities on top of them, we can apply that 24 times, right? Or 20 sometimes for each of our markets. And so I am really bullish on peer-to-peer right now for business media companies, and how the pandemic has changed how people will interact and learn from each other and go. I think there's still there's still a world for in-person events, and I think that's something that's on our horizon. But I think parts of the in-person event use case, like, we just have to be realistic. When digital takes a hold of some of it, it never goes away, right? And so this is I've been telling people, this is the Craigslist moment for the events industry, right? Where Craigslist came in and took a use case of the newspapers. I think the pandemic and things like Zoom and the rest have shown people that there are parts of the in-person use case that don't necessarily have to be in person. And I think peer-to-peer community is one of those. And so I'm really, it's still just in my brain, not like on paper, but I'm really excited about what we can do, because I think there are within our markets and our publications right now, within our audience, there are dozens of peer communities waiting to be found. We just need to activate them.
Well, I think the fact that you've got such a large email database you developed for each of your industries, if you're going to launch an in-person event, that's where it starts. You got to be able to market it, and you've got the marketing vehicle to do it. Hey, Sean, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time. This has been a fantastic session. It's been fun connecting with you again, and I wish you all the best with Industry Dive. I think you guys are just going to continue to grow, and I'm excited to watch you do it.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you very much for having me. This is fun. It's always good to talk to you and hear your insights on what we're doing.
My pleasure, my friend. Have a great day.